All right, so this is the intro Python course, and so we're about halfway through the course now. So we'll do lists today and dictionaries next week, and I must say I'm very happy to go through lists because in my opinion lists are the most valuable Python structure. This is one I use more often than anything else. Lists are the all-purpose way to store a bunch of data and manipulate it. Dictionaries are pretty nice too, but lists are by far the most common thing you use. So let's take a look at the chapter here. So a list is just a sequence of things. You put it in square brackets. So you can have a couple of numbers in a bracket, and that's fine. You can put strings in, and that'll make a list. You can mix strings and numbers. Guess I'll make this a little bigger. You can have, it's fine, you can have a string, numbers, floating point numbers, integers, and you can even have a list as an element in a list. All these things are perfectly legal. They call that a nested list. If you have an empty list, it has no elements. Length will tell you the length of the list. Let's see, cheeses up here is 3. So the length of that ought to be 3, okay. The length of an empty list is 0, of course. And here's one of these state diagrams that these guys love. I don't get that much out of them, but anyway, there you are. Cheeses points to this list, numbers points to that list. All right, so lists are mutable. Another reason why they're great. That's why they, of course, the reason I like them, these are very much like arrays, which I used in long dead languages like BASIC and language like Fortran, which where I got used to programming. So you can define cheeses. Cheeses sub 0 is cheddar, and you could set cheeses.0 to something else. I could make this equal Fred. And then when I print it, now it'll be Fred. So you can just totally modify the contents of a list, and that's fine, which is handy. So now we can set numbers. Let's see, numbers, we're up here. Well, it's not worth bother. Let's just find out what numbers are. I'll just add it here. What's numbers? There we go. Numbers is 42, 123. Well, I can change that second number to 117, and now it's 4217. So that's perfectly fine. So that's the indices. It starts counting at 0. That's the only possibly confusing part. This is the 0th element. This is the number 1 element. But other than that, it's perfectly fine. All right. And if you have a negative value, you can use negative values. That counts backwards from the ends of the list. So if I try to print numbers, so -1, that will be 17. Okay, so -1 is the last element, and -2 will be one to the left of that. That'll be the 42. All right. You can use the in element. So Edam, their list of cheeses is Edam in cheeses, and the answer is it's true. It is in there. Is Wesleyndale in cheeses? And it's not. That's false. All right. A list can contain another list, but the nested list is the same element. So if I count the length of this is spam, 2, 5, and a list. That's a total of 4 elements. Even though this is a list that contains 2 elements, it counts as 1 element at this level. All right, and 10 is not an element. 10 is not in T. That's an important fact. 10 is not there because there isn't a single item called 10. However, the list 10, 20 is in there. That's going to be true. So that may be a little confusing, but that's how it works. If you want to know if something's in the list, you have to have one complete element that matches what you're matching. All right. Now you could do this though. You could have T sub 3, and now 10 is going to be in there because T sub 3 is the third element of the list, and that is the list 1020. So this is going to be true. All right. You can do slices, just like you can do slices of a string. If you have letters A, B, C, D, you can go from 1 to 3. That's going to start at element 1 and go up to, but not including element 3. So it's going to be B and C. You can pick pieces of a list out. You can omit the first index, and then it will start at the beginning and go up to, but not including the last one. So this is 0, 1, 2. This is 2. It will be A and B, the first 2 elements. And you can omit the second element. It'll go from there to the end. So this will be C and D from 2 to the end. If you omit them both, you get the whole list. And by the way, you can use negative numbers. I think I can go like -2 colon. That should work. That should start at, I think, C and continue. Yeah, just like you can do that sort of thing. All right. Okay, that's why they're extremely handy. All right. All right, you can also copy a list using the list function. I can have a list of letters, and actually I would think that would be a list of a list. Let's see what it is. Nope, you just get the list. That's not obvious to me. I would think list of a thing that's already a list would give you a nested list, but apparently not. All right. You can concatenate lists with the plus sign. So 1, 2, and adding 3, 4 to it, you get 1, 2, 3, 4. You can use multiplication to repeat something. So spam times 4. I have a list with one element. I multiply it by 4. Now I get 4 elements. That's cool. I've never done that. You can do the sum to add up the elements of a list. So T1 is a numerical list up here, 1 and 2, and now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, so it should add up to 10. All right, but if I tried to add this one, the spam, 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 it shouldn't be able to add it up. Let's try this. Let's set foo equals this, and now try to sum foo. It should complain, I suppose. Yeah, you can't add up some kind of integer total of adding strings to it. This is a fairly confusing error message because I have 4 strings, but anyway, it doesn't letting me do it. Its description of exactly what the problem is a little opaque. But you can't add 4 copies of the string spam and get an integer total. You can do minimum and max. So that's 1 and the maximum is 4. Now what would happen if I tried to do minimum or maximum of a list that contains spam 4 times, like foo? I guess it'll just give me the minimum and the maximum because I guess it'll just sort them in alphabetical order and call that the minimum and maximum. That's what I imagine that does. All right, you can append something to the end of a list with E too. So you have letters and you can append an E to the end. I do this quite a lot. I add things to a list. We have difficulty calculating it. I make a loop. You can also extend, and it will append all these arguments, so it'll add FNG to it. All right. And you can pop the last element, pop an element out of a list by saying it. That will remove that one element. So here's T is ABC, and I do T pop, and what comes out is B, and therefore what's left is A and C. That's one way to remove elements from a list. If you know the element but you don't know the index, you can remove it by value. Remove will remove the value B from the list. Pop will pop that index, that location. So this is what you use if you know where it is. This is what you use if you know what the data you're trying to get rid of is. All right. If the element you remove is not in the list, you'll get an error. If I try to remove a D, it's going to tell me I can't remove it because it's not in there, which makes sense. And by the way, the same thing should happen if I try to pop something that's off the end of the list, like 4. It should complain about that. Yep, index out of range. Okay, so that makes sense. All right, and so a string is a sequence of characters, and a list can be a sequence of those characters. You can turn it into a list, so you'll get the individual characters this way. You can do that if you like. That actually might be the handiest way. When I do things where I have to change characters inside a string, since strings are not mutable, I have to go through and build a new string. Turning it into a list first and then sorting the elements of a list and then recombining it might be a more efficient function. If you want to break the string into words, you can use the split method. This is something I use a lot. You can split by a character. So if I have 4 words here with spaces and I split it, it splits it by those words. Now you can put a delimiter in here. So I could instead split by the S's. And then I would get, oh, that's interesting. I'm surprised I still got the same answer. Oh, I see. I got 2 elements. There's no S's in it. Okay, let's choose a letter that's in like I. Let's try splitting by the I's, because that'll break the pining into 2 pieces. There we go. So I get the part before the first I, then I get the part before the next I, and then I get all the rest of it that doesn't contain an I. And now the spaces are included. So if you don't give it a delimiter, if you don't specify the delimiter, it'll choose a space, and I think it'll probably also use things like tab and carriage return. But if you specify the delimiter, you can do this. All right. And so here you can have X parrot, and I can split by the dash, and so I'll get X in parrot. All right. If you have a list of strings and you want to combine them back together, you can use join. and you can specify the delimiter to be used between them. So this will take those things and put it back into that phrase, pining for the fjords. And that answers the other thing I was thinking about back here. When you break up a word this way, how do you put it back together? Well, evidently you do it that way. So you would do node delimiter dot join of t. That should do it. Yeah, I put pining for the fjords back together. I thought I was going to get spam though. Oh, it's S. S is T is list of. Oh, hey, it was redefine T later is why. If I define T here and then run this, then I get the spam back. Okay, fair enough. All right, so that's good, clean fun. So now I can print the cheeses, and here's cheeses. All right, and after I use split to make a list of words, I can use a for loop to loop through them for word in S split. All right. A for loop over an empty list will never do it because there are no X in this, so this condition is never true, so it won't do anything in there. All right, and you can sort lists. So if I have 3 letters, I can sort them. It'll put them in alphabetical order, of course. The original list is unchanged. It does not sort the list in place. It creates a new list that's sorted. All right, and you can do it with any kind of sequence. You can do it with strings. I can take this string and sort it, and now I'll get a list of the letters sorted alphabetically. But I could, of course, join them back together if I want to. All right, and so now if we make A and B equal to banana, they both refer to a string, but we don't know if it refers to the same string. Ah, good. I think they're getting down to the one worst thing about Python lists here. So there's 2 possible states. Here's where the figure is. Right, it could be that A points to a word banana and B points to another separate word that happens to be banana, or it could be they both point to the same word banana. And that's, so here's a way to check that. Does A equal B? And A is B. That means it's this one. They're both pointing to exactly the same object, which is pretty rude. And when you create 2 lists, you get 2 objects. Is that true? That's interesting. Okay. So state diagram looks like this. All right. Now, there's one thing that has hurt me many times, and yeah, I think we're going to explain it here. This is what confused me about Python lists many times. All right, so here, A is 1, 2, 3. And this is what I do. I'm used to doing this from other languages like BASIC and Fortran. I make a list, then I make another list, which I expect to be a copy of the first list. Then I try to change elements in the second one without changing elements in the first one. And it doesn't work because they're equal, which is very annoying. So these are just 2 pointers to the same object, which I've come across this twice while doing the Advent of Code, a coding challenge I do almost every year. And both times I spent days stuck because I couldn't believe this or understand it. I would have a list, then I make a copy, then I start changing the second one, and the first one changes. That's what I want to do. Let me add it here and show you that. So there's A and B, A is 1, 2, and 3, and B is 1, 2, and 3, and they're both mutable. So I can set B sub 0 equals to 4, and then I can print B. And this is what I would do. I would do calculations on the second one. And I don't know why it's taking forever to do this. It's not like that's complicated. Let's run this. Right, there we are. So if 1, 2, 3, now it's 4, 2, 3. But the thing that would get me and drive me nuts is A is now 4, 2, 3. And this is something I had to independently figure out like in 2 consecutive years because I kept making this mistake. I'm used to doing this for other languages. I can make a list, I can make a copy of the list, and these are now 2 separate things. And it's not true here. Now, if you want them to be 2 separate things, you use copy. You have to explicitly say that. Now they're false. Now you can change this one, and it will not change that one. And that's what you have to do. I think I've finally gotten used to that. But for a couple of years, I kept ramming my head against this and getting stuck because I was so used to not doing it that way. All right. So, like to see an object with more than one reference has more than one name, so it's aliased. So you're going to do the same thing I did. They're going to have A and B here. They're going to make it without the copy. And without the copy, they do equal each other. And so now when you set B0 equals 5, A now has 5 too. So that's very rude. For immutable objects, it's not that much of a string because you can't change a string anyway. So since you can't change it, it doesn't really matter that these are both pointing to the same object instead of two copies of the same object. All right, when you pass a list to the function gets a reference to the list, and this means if the function modifies the list, it changes it in a color too. So this is also true of C. It's a thing to know. So here's pop first. This will pop the first element off the list. And therefore, if I have letters here and I call the function on those letters, that's going to pop the A off, and that's not just popping the A off on a copy of the list here that was thrown away when I exited the function. It actually popped it off the real letters function, because when you pass a list, it passes a pointer to the list, and anything you do to the list in here also affects the list out here. All right, so here they're aliases for the same object, so they've got a state diagram to show you there. The main function has a thing called letters that points here, and the list subroutine has a pointer to the same object. So, all right. So now we're going to make a word list. We're going to download a word list someplace here. We're going to download this file. That'll create a file called words.txt, which you can see here. There it is, words.txt in your local list of files. And now you can, for every line, you can take the word and strip the line to get the carriage return off the end, and then you can append it to the words. So that'll give you a list of words with, looks like 100,000 and change words in it. All right. You could also do a read to read the entire file into a string, and then you'll have a string with more than 1 million characters, and you can use the split method to turn it into a list of words, but I don't think you're still going to have carriage returns in the end of it. I'm going to do a couple of tests here. This one up here was word list, and we use the same thing. Okay, let's do this one again then. If we do it this way, let's take a look at the first couple elements here. Print word list, word underscore list, sub 0. All right, close the print. Let's see what the first element looks like here. I'm at the parentheses. There we go. Right, the first element here is AA, but I think if I do that this time, it's going to have a carriage return in it, because I didn't see them do anything about the carriage returns. They read the whole file into a string, and then they split it on the spaces, but maybe that'll also split on the carriage returns. Let's see what the first one looks like. No, okay, I guess this split removed both the spaces and the carriage returns. That's something that wasn't obvious to me. All right, so I guess you get exactly the same number, 113783 and 113783. Okay, all right, now to check, does demotic exist in there? It does, but does contrafibularities in there? It's not. Okay, all right, there we are. All right, so now those are your list methods. You can modify the argument and return none. So if you're used to writing code like this, word is plumage, word is word stripped to get rid of the exclamation point and then word, you're not going to be able to do this in Python, I think. Are you? You are. Well, that's interesting. Of course, now I'm wondering, because you didn't really modify the word. What you did here is create a new word, missing an exclamation point, and then copy it into here. So it'll actually work. But if you try to do this with a list, well, actually, now why wouldn't this work? I see. Okay, and I understand. The word strip returns the word minus that character. But the tremove, the remove function just removes this function from the list, but it doesn't return the modified list. Instead, it expects to be working with a pointer to the list, so it'll automatically be modified. I see. So this will work, but this will not work. All right. What it'll do is it will make an empty list out of T. If you print T, it's going to be empty now because the remove function returns an empty list, or returns a value of none. All right, remove modifies list and returns none. So when you try to remove 2 from the remaining list, it's not going to work because the empty list doesn't have anything to remove. Okay, fair enough. All right, and I think that's it for this. So let me stop this recording.